And just to kind of bring you up to speed, what kind of sparked all this? Well, of course, a couple of days ago, the police shooting, the first one that started all of this off, happened in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. On the phone line to talk about these shootings, racial profiling, and some of the other things that the police officers are working with specifically as it comes to these very delicate and sensitive situations. Dr. Alex Del Carmen's on the phone with us. He's Executive Director, School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies. Doctor, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me this morning.
Hey, we appreciate you. Matter of fact, you're actually in the Dallas-Fort Worth area yourself.
I am.
What is it like, before we get into some of these specific things we want to talk about in your work, but what is it like right now where you are and what you've witnessed there?
You know, it's incredibly sad. We in Texas are very proud of our law enforcement community, and we are, as perhaps the rest of the country knows, very proud to be Texans. And this is a very sad day for all of us.
I can only imagine, as I saw the video yesterday of Philando Castile, in the aftermath, I just, a very, very heavy sense of dread fell upon me watching it, because I knew there were a couple of things specifically that I saw coming. We'll talk about some of those a little later on, social media and some of the other perspectives. But when it comes to these events, and we're still learning more about the shooting in Baton Rouge, we're still learning more about Philando Castile and what happened there. You know, the first shooting, we hear a lot about the background of the individual. You know, you hear several things about criminal, the long rap sheet, etc. But Philando Castile, you know, you hear about a man who just was the epitome of a good guy, working at a school in a cafeteria. He was a role model for children. He was the manager there. Always had good things to say. Of course, just a tragic situation that occurred. Can you tell me, what is it like when police are in these situations and they're dealing with people? And that's the other thing. I feel tremendous empathy for the police in these situations, too, because you never know when you're an officer who you're going to encounter, what you're going to deal with when you step out the door each day. What's that like when you're walking up to a squad, you know, to a car with somebody that you stop for a taillight?
You know, there's no question that police officers have the toughest job in the world, and they deal with a very difficult public and sometimes very difficult situations. When we call the police, we typically are either requesting a service or filing a complaint of some sort. And by virtue of that, they tend to see the negative of society. So so they get into this mindset of a very tunnel vision when it comes to dealing with people. And unfortunately, when they approach a vehicle, they have absolutely no idea who they have in front of them. It could be the most amazing, law-abiding citizen that perhaps committed a traffic violation or something insignificant, or it could very well be a Ted Bundy. And as we know from history, the way some of these serial killers and some of these really, really bad people, how they were caught is through a traffic stop. So traffic stops have become the primary tool of law enforcement in order to identify criminals and catch suspects. But at the same time, you know, as you pointed out, it is really, really sad when police officers get it wrong. And they either arrest the wrong person or they simply shoot and kill the wrong individual.
Dr. Alex Del Carmen on the phone with us right now, Executive Director, School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies. He's professor at Tarleton University. And I got to say, Doctor, you know, you nailed it. The other thing that I think when I see these things is you're talking about the interaction with police and who they're dealing with on a daily basis. What about some of the members of, you know, citizens dealing with police and seeing news report? We never see the good things that officers do. We never see the good stories. Occasionally, you'll see one that makes it past your news feed on Facebook, or a heartwarming story here, a little blurb at the end of the news. But most of it, and especially in the last few days, pretty stinking negative.
Well, good news doesn't sell, and bad news sells very quickly. And so we are in a state of mind right now where we have the usage of technology, which makes everything live. It's almost like we're watching a reality TV show on an ongoing basis, and people just tune in, and they watch. And sadly, people that don't know much about law enforcement formulate opinions about specific cases and generalize that. I'm not saying that law enforcement doesn't have a problem, but the reality is that it is a very small fragment of the law enforcement community that engages in these abuses of power.
All right, so I want to ask you before we let you go, what is it that any citizen should do? Matter a citizen of color, a citizen, a white. What should you do when you come in contact with police?
Well, obviously be aware of your rights. That's very, very important. The fact that the U.S. Constitution applies to every single one of us, regardless of what we do or we're accused of doing. And so I think that knowing our rights is very important. I think documenting the information is important. And I also think being polite, being respectful is important as well. The reality is that sometimes citizens have the ability of escalating or de-escalating an encounter with a police officer. So it's also upon us to make sure that the officer feels that we're not going to hurt that officer if we're just simply going to engage in an exchange that is polite and professional.
I've known several police officers, great people, and some of the best advice that I've gotten is exactly what you just said. When I'm stopped, if ever, it's, turn my lights on, roll my windows down, put my hands on the steering wheel, and I just smile and very politely and respectfully engage with the officer. And that does a lot, in my opinion, just to put them at ease. That's the number one thing I'm trying to do, is let them know that, hey, I'm not going to hurt you, because that in itself is something that they're worried about. Doctor, I really appreciate you joining us to have a conversation about these things. It is such a delicate subject, but it is something that we're dealing with and confronted with right in the face, that we're going to have to deal with. We're going to have to confront, or we're going to see more and more of it. What do you say is the thing that we can do to confront this? Is it the conversation that we're having right now? Is there more that we can do?
I think that public awareness and educational campaigns to aim at informing the public of what police officers do, what our rights are, is important. But I also think it's important for police officers to be educated as well.
It's important for what, I'm sorry?
For police officers to be educated as well as to who they're dealing with and the difficult circumstances that face them. So I think awareness and education are the key.
And Dr. Alex Del Carmen, Executive Director, School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.